If you don't know who Lio Convoy is, I recommend watching YouTube's most deranged furry predator hunter. That covers the background. This video is not a recap. I'm making a focused argument for why Lio Convoy should not be taken seriously as a credible authority because he has repeatedly shown a willingness to deceive, selectively forget, and rewrite events when it benefits him. In fact, we have Lio admitting on a call that probably wasn't meant to be public that he was acting with intent to deceive.
Crystal is kind enough to learn how to play the game. So while it seemed like we were beefing on social media, we were still talking behind the scenes.
Once someone hears Lio say,
to learn how to play the game.
At least in this particular matter, the question becomes, what exactly is real and what is performative? Clearly these callouts aren't just a game to them, right? So why does it seem like everyone lose the mind the moment you question or disagree with them? Why does criticism suddenly become harassment? Why does skepticism get treated like betrayal? If you want the full context for every clip I'm going to be using, it's all going to be linked in the description. Let's start with Akumu's talk with Lio Convoy, because this is where we see a clear pattern emerge from him.
In the call, okay, we're talking about the whole intimidation thing. You're saying it didn't register to you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you not say that you were going to show up to his house?
I did not say I was going to show up to his house. What I said was if I did, because he said, show up to my house. I said, if I did, how would you even know it was me?
Lio confidently denies making the statement. Not don't remember, not maybe I misspoke, a flat denial.
So he's very clearly in this call clarifying that if you come to his house, all right, so I just want to establish that and then continue this.
It's hard.
I'm not worried about some dumb 15-year-old making threats about firearms. If I want to ruin your life, I'll just call your school and tell them you made the threat and you won't get anywhere in life. You want to play this game? We can play that game.
Oh, yeah. Say it to my fucking face.
You are. You want me to come to your house?
Okay, he says, say it to my face. You say you want me to come to your house.
Yeah, do you want me to?
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. Then that's what we're going to do.
Can you rewind that?
Sure, yeah.
Your house? Okay, cool. And that's what we're going to do.
I thought it was in relation to me talking about finding his information. So, man, clearly I was in the wrong on that one. So I'll apologize for that.
Only after being confronted about it, with a fucking clip no less, does he admit that he was wrong. Because this isn't just a faulty memory at play here. It's certainty without verification, something he could have easily done. And what is his excuse for that?
And the dozens of people that have made videos talking about this, you haven't watched any of those videos?
No, I actually haven't because I've been a little busy, Akumo.
That's his excuse for going live on a live stream and asserting something as practically a fact, that he was busy.
I feel like just having a clear state, being like, okay, this is actually what happened. Here's the timeline.
Yeah,
of events,
you know by now that my memory is not 100% the best at all times, so best to double check.
So he does know this is a problem, or at least hints at it, yet he keeps doing it. This is probably one of the few times he'll admit to it. Now let's talk about the Ren call, because it shows the same behavior under pressure.
Still think you hurt him, but also,
Oh, I hurt him. In what way did I hurt him, Ren? Since you know so much about what goes on in my home, tell me.
emotionally, you,
Oh, emotionally. In what way?
he, in a group chat, he told, I'm trying to recall, he felt like,
I want evidence, not claims.
This call was done under false pretext. Ren wasn't even the source of the claim. They weren't responsible for the allegations being made, and yet Lio demands evidence on the spot. This is a reoccurring double standard that you'll find with him. Here's something Ren could have pointed to if they would have known what the call was really about beforehand.
When conflict arose recently, it had to be a family intervention every single time, and back then it wasn't like an interrogation in between siblings. In fact, it was, you two need to work things out. You guys aren't in trouble, but you two need to work this out. But then when it came to Hopeless Peaches, every conversation, she would be brought up to us as if it was an interrogation. So in the beginning, yes, we did try and fix things in between siblings, but recently it's been more like an interrogation more than a resolution to our problems.
Normally, I don't give testimonials much weight unless they're backed by evidence, but this matters because it aligns with Lio's own account of things.
Someone who still used their life against me. Knowing I didn't know any better, and knowing the people that could help, they had successfully isolated me from. I couldn't reach out to Monstrous because no matter what I was doing, Aaron had to know about it. I literally could not mute, put my phone into another room, and use the restroom without Aaron losing it on me. Wanted to know where I was and what I was doing.
I had the same
I'm
thing going
going.
on. So I understand.
Don't, no, I had it going on for almost 2 years. 2 years, every boundary I had was broken. I was told horrific things, some of which I tried to relate to you and tried to give you evidence for, and you rejected it. You rejecting the evidence was you. That wasn't Aaron.
So even by Lio's own telling, control and isolation were central themes that he went along with. Now the fact that Lio still doesn't understand how much control Peaches had over him, allegedly, and how that control hurt him without causing him to hurt anyone else, apparently, this already tells you his judgment on these matters can't be trusted. True, no matter if he's lying about these things or not. By his own admission, Peaches was trying to isolate him. Why does he not consider how that and his blind obedience during that time, apparently, could have affected how other members of this found family felt about it? Because even now, he frames that period not as a failure of discernment, but something that merely happened to him. This is where Hamlin's razor comes in. Never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity. Fine, let's apply it here. Even if we assume Lio wasn't malicious, the level of incompetence on display is still rather disqualifying because authority doesn't become safe just because the person wielding it didn't mean harm. It's impossible to know the intent, so let's go with this. Because even then, we've seen the consequences of that incompetence from him repeatedly.
And while you guys all have an absolutely wonderful example of me taking out my frustration on somebody who did not deserve that level of it, the life ruination nonsense is horrifically egregious. And I don't know what's going in your statement, but I sure hope it's good. And if you're wondering why I asked you more about Mally, it's because even though Mally's cut me off primarily due to things Aaron has done or pushed me into doing, like violating my most prized, for lack of a better word, value of if I have a problem with you, I will take it to you. I was not allowed to do that. Mally does not need somebody like you in their life. You're going to bring them more trouble. So I really hope Mally isn't the person giving you another chance. Because they don't care about me, but I still care about their safety. They've been through enough with this nonsense. But you know what? At least Mally had the sense to cut Aaron off. And maybe if I was able to have actually at that time had an open, honest conversation with Mally, maybe I could have had somebody to reach out to. But I couldn't.
What's striking about this call isn't just the admission of wrongdoing, it's the framing. Lio acknowledges that he took out his frustrations on someone who didn't deserve it. He recognizes that the behavior was egregious, and yet in the same breath, he positions himself as someone who needs to be listened to, still concerned about others' safety, still justified in intervention. Since the question of if Lio is autistic comes up, let's ask ourselves what sort of mask he wears.
We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
Lio's mask here isn't confident or certain. It's confused, fragile, and kind of a moral exhaustion at the core of it, because that mask does something useful. it explains away responsibility while trying to preserve the authority. And when people push back on that, when they question his judgment, Lio frames it as betrayal, as if criticism itself is cruelty. The irony is about to get louder.
If I don't do this, like, then who should? But then at the same time saying, well, I didn't understand mental health. It's not my fault, I just didn't understand. I was just a little ooey baby. I didn't understand. And then in the same breath, it's like, yeah, but I still have to do, I'm still the guy for this.
Why this might be Melly malware summon things up for Lio. Lio openly admits he didn't understand mental health. Not at the time, not in the moment, not when it mattered. Still trying to hold on to the authority. Still the one who should be trusted. Still, you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to plead incompetence and demand deference. This same logic resurfaces in his claim that Melly malware was trying to isolate him. It's a incredibly weak argument, but also a revealing one. The isolation narrative worked with Peaches, so now it's become reusable, I guess? If someone challenges him, they must be trying to cut him off from others. But this version collapses almost immediately.
Some rest and re-listening to that call, Mally didn't come in there to try to make a difference. Mally came in there to attempt to shame me and isolate me from other people.
Because Crystal Flame herself admits to failures in both the Sasu and Rin call. She was the one who, at least technically, brought Mally into the mod call in the first place. Or at the very least, gave her guidance on how to approach it.
Why have you got a list of questions from Crystal? Because Crystal gave these questions, seemingly, to Mally to ask to Lio. Which, you know, you might say, well, what's wrong with that? Crystal had the ability to ask Lio these questions and chose not to.
So the idea Mally was orchestrating some isolation campaign doesn't really hold up. What you're actually seeing here isn't manipulation in a mastermind sense. It's something more mundane and probably more dangerous at the end of the day. Because Lio doesn't need to give orders. He doesn't need to control people directly. He just needs a structure where others act for him, absorb the fallout, and leave him with plausible deniability. He keeps the authority, other people take the damage. In most cases. That's why Hamlin's razor doesn't save him. Because even stripped of malice, which he does have, but he directs it at the right targets, I guess. What's left is still someone wearing a mask of helplessness, at least at this moment, while quietly trying to hold on to the influence they've already proven they can't handle. And that's not just ironic, it's disqualifying. After all of that, we do start seeing a change in what Lio does. But that change isn't in really needs or in judgment. It's in content, discords, and tactics. With that last one, only to certain degrees, most likely to try to adapt to the new environment that he's moving into. Instead of operating in the broader art community spaces like he used to, Lio pivots into small commentary and streaming circles, while still trying to swing around the weight of his old predator hunting reputation, as if that alone makes his reason trustworthy, or his authority at all. So, since Lio switched things up, I'm gonna do the same in this video here. Let's start with Hidden Heroin, because this ties directly to my closing argument here. Hidden Heroin is a mod for Lio Convoy who popped up during all the controversy with Peaches. Hidden Heroin did a video on someone who was trying to be a YouTuber named Dreamer. Hidden's video on Dreamer opens up with a personation claim that Dreamer made. One she makes far more convoluted than it needs to be, because the only solid confirmation that a personation occurred comes from Dreamer themselves.
fact an alt account of the original Mr. Fields 11 account, which I was able to confirm after some research and with the help of some friends, meaning that, congratulations streamer, you had a point. You were impersonated once apparently.
So she explicitly concedes that Dreamer was impersonated at least once. But then, without really proving any additional evidence, she escalates the claim.
Shane, you lied about it occurring twice and maliciously framed someone's messages as admittance of something they've never done before they've even supposedly done it.
Asserting that Dreamer lied somehow, which is weird because the video of Dreamer, that hidden links, Dreamer does a better job of proving that they were impersonated than Hidden does with her Trust Me Bro. I mean, Vlad could have looked this up himself or one of his mods, but since he's a troll himself, I'm sure he would say he doesn't care. Issues come up repeatedly in Hidden's video. For example, when she describes
7th of June, there was a fight in Glass Raven server after Lio discovered Dreamer was within it. It starts with Dreamer tagging Lio directly and calling him abusive.
But that's not how the interaction actually started. Lio tagged Dreamer first, at least in Glass Raven's Discord. So either her retelling is misleading or the word start is being used in a very creative way here. Now you could argue that Lio just couldn't simply ignore Dreamer's YouTube community post, but that's still a very different claim than saying Dreamer initiated the conflict in the Discord. That distinction matters, at least if you wanted to tell an honest retelling of all these events. The same could be said of this section of Hidden Heroin's video.
On the 23rd of February, Beckett, aka COPECAST, holds a livestream in which he originally covers Leadhead Fan versus Goddammit Malcolm, link in the description. During this, Dreamer makes an appearance within the stream and immediately begins picking a fight with Gilded Poo over his takes. I've put up the most notable instances of this on screen, and as you can see, it's Gilded who brings up what he perceived as Dreamer's attacks on his child.
Yeah, immediately begins picking a fight, or maybe it's the most notable instance. I don't know how Hidden uses words. Maybe they just get lost in translation. Cause going through the chat, it seems that Gilded Poo is the one who picked the fight with Dreamer. And Gilded's perceived attack on his child is incorrect given we now know he was being impersonated in that chat by Mr. Fields. And even if Dreamer is somehow lying about being impersonated the first time, since the Kumo stream is being used as the example here, it makes her point about the first stream rather moot, which sort of ties into this weird assumption by Hidden.
And frankly, at the Lio haters, y'all shouldn't have picked this up to cover as the RoSA Call 2.0.
But it wasn't given that name by Malcolm, unless he cut that part from his VOD. If I were to attribute that name being applied to this here, RoSA 2.0, I would attribute it to Gilded Poo, or as they sometimes call him, Vlad.
This is already being called RoSA the sequel.
This is already being called RoSA the sequel.
Yep.
Now maybe Hidden didn't get this. They called it RoSA 2.0, claim from Vlad. The special thanks she gives him in the description and not sourcing anything from Malcolm, along with this line.
When y'all didn't even bother to do any research at all, and some of y'all, hi Malcolm, took someone else's third-party assumptions as fact in order to go over this.
Makes me press X to doubt on that, especially when she didn't do anything to prove such a thing as Malcolm calling it RoSA 2.0. And even less about him taking someone else's third-party assumption as fact, given how many, in my opinion, she littered this video with, along with all the facts that she tried distorting. So if you're lost about why Malcolm was mentioned, that is because his involvement in this was why this video was even made, in all likelihood, because there's an unlisted stream on Glass Raven's channel. The person who directly talked to Malcolm about how she, Glass Raven, let The Lio debate with Dreamer on her channel get out of hand.
Dream was making the mistake I made directly after stream as well. I got onto like Malcolm's stream without like any context of who Malcolm was, and I absolutely ate shit.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Still, it almost sounds like Hidden didn't even watch that Malcolm stream and took Gilded Poo's claim on Beckett's stream as the truth.
It wasn't good.
Yeah, Malcolm reached out to me about this video because I make a passing mention at him. And so he was like, hey, if you want to get in a call, just let me know. And I was like, no, thank you. Like, I'm not interested. And he just goes, Hidden's running. And I'm like, no, I'm just setting a boundary, bro.
Isn't
like,
damn it, Malcolm, that like trans dude?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He covered this, and he was one of the people who compared this call to the RoSA call, and so did Sai. And so I mentioned him in passing. I was like, kind of weird.
They called my call the RoSA
Documents.
Call 2.0.
Yeah.
See, it seems like this was news to Glass Raven too. Maybe Hidden should have, like Green Cap, had something to back up this claim, something I like to call evidence and not just talking out of your ass. Maybe it exists, but I can't find any factual evidence for that claim of hers. She does it again later to someone completely unaware of this guy.
I have no idea who
Hi,
Malcolm
Lio.
is, but from your reaction, I'm getting that he's bad.
He's okay. He's not a horrible person, right? But I just think I don't know much about him, but like he's not very well viewed in this side of the commentary community because he's more like a debate bro than anything.
Yeah, he's kind of silly because he tends to do this thing where he takes like things as facts when they aren't.
But at least I don't have to guess why Hidden mentioned Malcolm in her Dreamer video, because she says it directly here.
I just don't like it when people go out there. Like, the only reason this situation is as big as it is because people like Malcolm and Beckett and whoever the fuck else covered it, so it spread to a wider audience. And the problem with that is that if a wider audience does not have the facts on why things happen the way they happen, they start to make assumptions. When they start to make assumptions, lies spread. When lies spread, we have people comparing this call to the RoSA call.
So what are the actual facts here, Hidden? Because most of your so-called facts, when weighed against what I presented, makes it seem far more likely that she simply listened and believed what Gilded Poo claim Malcolm said somewhere. Maybe on Beckett's stream, maybe somewhere else. I don't know about that. Because she provides no evidence for the claim that Malcolm called it RoSA 2.0, and much of the rest of her video appears to be based on her personal opinions and feelings rather than substantial facts. By contrast, the objective facts that I can find seems to be on Dreamer's side, regardless what I think of their opinions or feelings on the matter. I think I spent enough time on this example. Let's switch back to Lio for a moment, not only because he was the one to invite Dreamer into this Discord server where all this supposed missing context that Hidden provides in her video, but Lio seems to share the same deeply subjective relationship with facts and evidence that we saw from her. I bring this up because what we saw from Hidden Heroin mirrors some of the things Lio has done at least a couple times before. Not in style, but in purpose. Videos that are meant to share opinions inside the community function as evidence for someone else's wrongdoing and for controlling the narrative if it ever breaks outside the community or if it's needed for content somewhere down the line, which is exactly what happened earlier in January 2025 with Bunny-chan. This gives me a chance to do the check notes meme completely unironically. Yeah, pause and read if you want, watch the VOD for yourself, but here's the relevant part if you don't want to do either of those.
Being said here, I said, deleted all your messages I see. You respond, hey Lio, can I ask you a
Lio,
question?
why didn't you have them?
Why do you fear? I'm not done. Can I ask you a question? No, not
he's
done.
not done.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you call yourself Lio Convoy? Why did you delete your messages? And why is there yet another account of someone being stupid on account of you? Honestly, I don't know. I've been offline all day. Why did you delete the messages where you sexually harassed me? Your response to that was, are they
You're
really that
saying that I'm sexually harassing you, but this shows no sexual harassment. So
It
you
shows
have
you-
to
it
explain
shows-
the sexual harassment.
Hey, moron. Hey, moron. It shows that you acknowledge you acknowledge it. I said I asked you a question. Answer it.
Yeah, and I'm
Next
asking you.
screenshot.
And
I'm
I'm
not
asking
done.
you, where's the sexual
I'm
harassment?
not done.
Okay, to answer my question.
Oh my god, can you let him finish, you cunt?
Ooh, misogyny? We did not put that on the bingo.
Let's slow this down. Lio is accusing Buddy Chan of sexual harassment. What evidence does he provide? None. In fact, it's a lack of evidence that is presented as proof. I want to call this an argument from ignorance, but it goes well beyond that. And this is one of the things he regularly accuses other people of doing. The burden of proof is magically reversed, and for something as low stakes as this level of accusation is not just petty, it's unhinged. And why I don't agree with Malcolm on everything, at least he has standards. He explains them, he argues for them, and he doesn't default to "you're bad, stupid, or crazy," which is Lio's replacement for argument. This happened in Gilded Poo's server. After Lio claimed he changed and was getting help following the RoSA call. I don't know what help that is, but clearly it isn't working. Now, people will argue, well, Lio doesn't seek these people out or something else like that, or like it's not as bad. But that is debatable, such as Lio inviting Dreamer to the Discord where it all went down and tagging them in Raven's server. But even if we grant all of that, he doesn't seek it out, he only does it defense, those sort of things. Sure, the reason that they got RoSA into that call was different, and the people around him are also different. Hell, I'll even grant that Lio Convoy, at least in that first call with Dreamer, wasn't the worst. It was the nicest I've seen him tell someone that they should get lost. And it seems since Dreamer didn't do the things that Lio told them to do, it started to raise in the meanness level for Lio. Now, I don't know if Lio did this with Bunny Chan in the beginning, but his behavior in that call was pretty much him back at his prime of mean old man, bullying autists online. Especially when he made the sexual harassment claim that had zero proof behind it, which makes his constant demand for evidence from others look hypocritical at best and manipulative bait at worst. Now, I'm not anti-baiting in principle. I use it sometimes, usually as a testing method. The kind of bait they use is designed to provoke, to humiliate, to berate, and to drag people into calls or other types of confrontational meetings. Unless you're one of the good ones, like Mally Malware. Until you aren't. Then they'll find a reason, a justification to treat you like this and try to pull you in. Because technically, Lio doesn't do all of this himself. It just happens on his channel, in his Discord, or the Discords of his so-called friends, with his moderators going around. And he will defend it in his comment section when pushback comes along. Something I know he's both judged and, let me be nice and say, criticized others for many times in the past. Yet somehow, when it comes to him, he's not responsible for any of that. Brings us to this moment here.
I would agree with you that in of itself is suspect.
It can be, and the reason why Vlad's suspect of that, and I can be it sometimes too, is because we both had instances where we've been around predator hunters who wound up being kid touchers. Isn't that right, Vlad?
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I think that most of the people I'd been around were kid touchers or freaks of other type because they were troll shielding. I mean,
obsessed, deranged snake stream. This is where the mask slipped because he just described his own environment. Troll shielding is when someone embeds themselves with trolls so they can claim ignorance, chaos, and irony when things go wrong.
And I can just go and download whatever to send to those people to troll them. I kind of just lost interest and quit giving a fuck. So there you go, Kumo. I hope you found that entertaining.
Thank you so much, Vlad, for coming out here and explaining the entire situation to everyone. I hope that put it in a better perspective for those of you who've just heard Peaches and Lio call him a zoophile, dog fucker, whatever, and then not really hear anything else about it from anyone else but him. It definitely doesn't help that Gilded Poo exaggerates it every time just to mess with people, because at the end of the day, Gilded Poo is just a troll.
A better way to phrase what I'm trying to say comes from something Mally Malware once said to me after I made a mask off comment in Aiden's chat. Personally, I don't think he's mask off. I think it's just a new mask that suits his edgier friends. Lio adapts to whatever social sphere he's in. Even if that account is somehow impersonating Mally, it still captures the situation more accurately. This isn't Lio dropping the mask, it's Lio changing mask. Just as Lio Convoy previously used the mask of a victim against people like Mally Malware and Bunny Chan, he will use whatever mask he thinks best fits the moment. Now, if you don't like the mask metaphor, you can think instead as shifting of expertise or identity, depending on what's the most useful thing for him to do at the time. For example, when questioned about being in Discord spaces with minors, his toy reviewer identity can be used as a shield, one that he doesn't even need to deploy himself. And given the nature of Lio, others will take that up in his stead very often using previously established evidence, such as Hidden Heroin's video, to deflect and redirect that criticism towards someone else. Lio doesn't always deploy this sort of soften up technique, such as using cat's paws, such as Gilded Poo and Hidden Heroin, but it is common for him to do that. But when Lio does step up to the plate, as can be seen in his review of Gilded Poo vs. Malcolm, there's a number of tactics that he will use in conjunction with whatever mask, identity, or expertise he's leaning on for this particular situation. Whatever is the most useful in any given case. That can include leaning on his past as a pedo hunter, to strongly imply anyone criticizing him must secretly be that thing instead, drawing false comparisons between current critics and older, genuinely unhinged critics to sort of imply they're all the same, pointing to the association of his critics, past or present, to paint them as hypocrites for not criticizing those people in the same way.
Going through what kind of people CasWarFox affiliates with and what he willfully ignores. Gilded Poo, aka Vlad,
citing former critics he's now cool with as supposed evidence of the current critics being wrong. Aligning yourself with people like Gilded Poo does not make you immune from criticism for the same behaviors, especially when many of the things you're being criticized for now are things Gilded Poo personally witnessed or even joined in on. In fact, that might be part of the problem here. Likewise, just because some of your past critics are friendly with you now does not mean the current critics are wrong for revisiting your past and comparing it to your present behavior. That comparison is reasonable, particularly when you yourself have done exactly that to others. In the case of Buddy Chan, you explicitly used your past video about them against them in the present. Doing that practically invites people to re-examine that video and your behavior surrounding it to see whether your actions then or now were actually justified. Using former critics as a shield against current criticism is especially weak when those same people are directly involved in the situations you're being criticized for. The Bunny Chan call that took place in Gilded Poo's server and was later leaked is a clear example of this overlap. I'm not even fully going to get into the ZV situation. I seem to be the minority in having serious issues with how Lio handled that. Even if I agree that ZV often invites trouble on himself.
No, my Toastify video that I released actually not that long ago, and think it is kind of weird that this person didn't talk about the fact that his friend on the internet groomed a kid and just kept it quiet for an extended period of time for the sake of content.
Because from the beginning, this was always meant to be published.
Notice he doesn't say that in the document, by the way.
Yeah.
not only until after you and Lio talk about it.
If it was always meant to be published, then he's kind of supporting my point that he was using this as ammunition against Doc in the future. Like,
I only bring this up as another example of Gilded Poo allowing, and in this case encouraging, Lio's repeated pattern of behavior. The same pattern that shows up in how criticism of Lio's public debate with Dreamer is handled. People who focus solely on Lio's behavior in that public live stream are dismissed for not knowing the entire back lore between all this shit here. That's why I spent so much time earlier going over Hidden's video on Dreamer, to show how people in Lio's orbit try to raise the bar for criticism so high that it becomes unusable. Among everything else I pointed out about that, they act if one must have full, intimate knowledge of every detail leading up to a situation before they're allowed to criticize Lio's conduct. It's a standard Lio himself fails to meet in a vast majority of cases. More importantly, it highlights the length to which Lio defenders will go to ensure that people inside their circles will dismiss anything said by those outside of it, regardless to how reasonable that criticism might actually be. I also don't think many of Lio Convoy's other critics have brought up what happened with 90s Router Guy, which I previously went over on a live stream. I agree there's legitimate criticisms to be made of how Router Guy handled parts of that situation. However, the Discord raid conducted by Gilded Poo in the aftermath was generally a fucking boatload of a mess. It's very ironic given the last time Lio was involved in one of these Discord gay op, Gilded Poo was on the other side of this equation here.
Instead, you want to wait until you can whip it out publicly because you're pissed off about the FCK shit. So when Kumo was addressing this, he said it took all of 10 seconds to ban the now 17-year-old when I was informed of this. Yet Lio doesn't want me or any of my mods knowing. So Poo, Gilded Poo, messaged this guy and said, random question, I'm a mod from Kumo's server. How old are you? 17. He says, it's an 18 and up server. Sorry. Damn.
Later, responsibility for that incident seemed to quietly shift onto Crystal Flame.
I discovered a user who stated they were 16 years old. Here's where I made the critical error in my judgment. Instead of approaching Kumo or his moderation team directly with this information, I shared it with others, specifically Enla and Lio. My motivations and mistakes. I spent the last day reflecting on my motivations and actions. I've had a conversation with Gilded Poo, and while it's hard for me to fully articulate why I acted the way I did.
Yeah, that whole video was rather weird. The last bit about Gilded Poo that I included in there just makes me wonder what was said between them. Still, since I started off with Lio.
And not just Kumo's server, I also found you in Crystal's. Now, Crystal is kind enough to learn how to play the game.
I have to wonder about the sanity of those who play this game with Lio. And what exact rules him and his community play under that make them talk like Crystal does here?
Sharing information with Enla and Lio. While I didn't intend for the information to be spread, I put them in an awkward position, and I should have kept the concerns to myself or addressed them through proper channels.
And moving forward, this was took it from a re-upload, because I guess she deleted her channel sometime afterwards. This is just one example of many examples of the way these communities sort of do these things. Really seem to make it hard to figure out what's going on, and that wouldn't be a problem if they didn't fucking use this as a gatekeeping method for those who want to criticize people such as Lio when they cross from those sort of on the outside of their community, because much of what matters in these situations happens off platform, especially in Discord calls like the Goat Cato stage call, hosted by Hidden Heroin. I'm not bringing this up now to place the blame solely on Hidden or Lio or anyone at all, because at the end of the day, that really doesn't matter. What does matter is that much of what Hidden does appears to be in the service of what she believes is necessary, in service to her community. And I haven't really seen any public indication that Lio really disapproved of her actions anywhere. He might have said it somewhere. Who the fuck knows? Still, it's important because Lio is either the leader of this community or, at the very least, the person this community, along with others like Gilded Poo's trolling community, actively protects from criticism. For those who aren't familiar with this incident that I'm referring to, hidden stage call on Goat Cato, just know that almost no one thinks it was a good idea, at least from what I've seen. With that out of the way, let me wrap this up with my closing statement / argument. Outside of a few nearly universal moral positions like Edo behavior is bad, most people treat right and wrong as subjective things that are to be argued over. And that ambiguous nature is something Lio Convoy repeatedly exploits through his pedo hunting persona. Creates a moral shield that discourages scrutiny and reframe disagreement as malice. I care less about declaring people evil and more about presenting an argument that I believe holds up under scrutiny. That doesn't make me definitively right, but I do think that makes me reasonably correct. Especially when the responses to my arguments tend to be whataboutisms, character attack, or attempts to shift the conversation away from the substance of what I've been saying. That said, I still read comments and do live streams after videos such as this one because I accept that I could be wrong. I'm open to being challenged on the merits, but I've also learned to be careful with how I engage with that. Ultimately, this video is an attempt to explain why Lio Convoy should not be treated as a credible authority. I believe I've shown a consistent pattern of willingness to deceive, the selective memory part, and a tendency to benefit from others rewriting events on his behalf, even if he isn't doing all this directly. With that said, I'm done.